Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at Keenan Flagler Business School, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. By the time you hear this, I'm probably back from Bermuda. Hopefully I'm safe. But 3 p.m. is the absolute latest. That's the drop dead deadline when I have to get stuff to Nemanja, our sound engineer. And that's when we're getting back. So I have to record this in advance. So I'm going to be quick and brief. It's hard doing 3 episodes in advance, by the way. Couple announcements, and then we'll have the final part of the Bob Massa interview and the final part of the lawyer panel. So the first thing is, do you realize all our episodes are up on YouTube? Now, I haven't commented on this. They've been up on YouTube for years because they're not like video podcasts. I know those are getting popular. It's something I want to look into. It's kind of a pain, to be honest, because then you got to be on camera and all that. But if the popularity is there, we'll look at doing some of those. They're not up there. They just have a picture of our image and you can hear them. And they've been up there for years. But the reason I'm sharing them with you is I've noticed they've improved. Like one of the things they have on YouTube now is like the timestamps for each section. So if you scroll to the bottom, you can see when each new section comes up in the time in case you want to skip ahead or you just want to know how long a section is. And the other thing is they get up there really fast. So, I pay for the podcast. I pay per minute. There's a per minute fee I pay. And when I want to see how much I have to pay every week, I just go to YouTube because it's right up there really quickly. I just put in YCBK 565. And it seems like it's up there 12:20 Eastern. 9:20 Pacific after a new episode drops. So anyway, if you're a big YouTube person, you might want to check out listening to us on YouTube. Now, my other announcements are all ones I made last week. I'm just going to be more succinct this week. So we have 3 different opportunities. We think they happen to all be great. And they all can be found by going to your.com, going to the resources tab. The first is our listener survey. It is helping us so much. I cannot even begin to tell you. I don't know if you've noticed, when I introduce an interview, that it's changed from before. So some feedback that a listener shared was, I'm not really a fan of these really long bullet point, intros that you do. But sometimes when I listen to part 2 or 3, I kind of forget the previous context. And you just kind of jump right in. So one thing you could do is just a real quick, really short distillation summary of what you covered before. And that would be extremely helpful to me to kind of pick up the context. And I thought, that's something that we actually can do. Some of the suggestions are things we can't do. That's one we actually can do. So once again, your listener survey feedback, we're going to make changes immediately in some cases. So if you want to improve our podcast, go to yourcollegeboundkid.com resources tab, click the listener survey, and share your honest thoughts, what you like and what you don't like. Secondly, we have a lawyer panel coming up, and we're starting to get pretty close, right, in time, because you guys are going to hear this episode on my math's right, the 2nd of September, Labor Day. Well, the lawyer panel's on the 14th. It's for students, college or high school, that want to learn more about the law. And so Torito Leonardo and Chris Leonardo, a DC couple that have a big heart and they want to just provide advice for guidance for people that are law curious, sign up. The form's right there. You'll see it at the same place, your collegeboundkid.com resources tab. Lawyer panel on 9/14. That's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific, 5 Mountain, 6 Central. We'd love to have you, students, and pass the word, parents, to other people that you might think are law curious. You might want to learn a little bit more about what the profession is like. And then we have our case studies. That's right. You're going to get to be on an admissions committee. You got to go to the same place, your collegeblindkid.com resources tab, and then you'll see case studies. Now, this one's a little trickier because when you open that Google form, you're going to see another link right away. It's a link to a Google Drive. And you want to go into that Google Drive because you're going to see all of the information about the 3 students. You're going to see their transcripts. You're going to see their recommendations. You're going to see their test scores. You're going to see their complete Common App. You're also going to see a profile on Cascadia, the college. You're going to see a little bit about that college so you know the context and what they're all about. And then you're going to read all of them. And in your mind, you have to only admit one, deny one, waitlist one. So make that decision. Then you go back to the Google form and you cast your vote. And there's also a place, by the way, for you to comment about anything from this experiment, because we're going to come back and do like a recap episode, and your comments in there actually will be extremely helpful for that. So that's the third opportunity. And so, yeah, short and sweet today. Without any further ado, let's transition to a final part. Susan and I talking with Bob Massa.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, Bob Massa has over 50 years of experience in admissions and enrollment management and consulting to admission offices and presidents. And Bob talks about character and college admissions in our final part. And Bob shares 5 distinct types of areas where character can be assessed for each student. And of course, got to keep our tradition. Bob goes on the hot seat in our lightning round. Listen and enjoy.
Susan, I know that you had wanted to talk about character, and that may be a little segue into that.
Yep, that's my drift. Truthfully, Bob, one of your enormous, many contributions to the profession, but, from my perspective, one of your most significant contributions has been your leadership in character assessment in the college admission process, and the humanization of that, and not making it just one more competitive playing field for kids to prove that they are a better person or more worthy than other people, but to really share the idea that colleges care deeply about the citizenship, the capacity for civil discourse, the empathy and care, not just their own aggrandizement in terms of achievement, and that colleges now, thanks to you and the Character Collaborative, have been given some tools as to how to include that in their application review without making it into a, kind of a pretense. So that said, I feel like it has caught on. I feel it's caught on in the application supplements of a lot of colleges. I also think that sociologically, colleges are terrified about what's going on their campuses. They have seen a pretty steep decline, in many cases, in the capacity of undergraduates to engage in civil and empathetic ways around especially around controversial issues. And truthfully, one of the highest compliments a college can pay when they read an application, I find this true in all 3 schools I've read for over a long period of time, but one of the highest compliments an admission reader can make is that the student is a community builder. And they may all define that a little differently, but I think that's at the heart of what you've been doing with this character movement.
Yeah, so just very, very briefly, the late David Holmes and I formed the Character Collaborative back in 2016 to educate admissions staff on assessing character as one of the criteria in a selective admissions process. David was a professor at the University of Vermont and then went on to be a headmaster at 2 independent schools, and he was really moved. And I think I don't know, 2014 or 2015 by a TED talk that Angela Duckworth gave. And Angela is founded the Character Lab at the University of Pennsylvania, and wrote a book on grit, if you remember.
Yeah.
At its high point, before the pandemic, the collaborative had about 70 institutional members, college, about half and half, colleges and secondary schools, independent schools. And then we had individual members above that. And we produced 3 training videos that are still in use today. We've transitioned after David passed away in 2023, late 2022. We transitioned to NACAC, so it's now called the Character Focus Initiative. And I'm not involved in it any longer, but was the chair of the board for 6 years, and oversaw the development of those training videos. There's really what our point here was that colleges have their own values, right? They have their mission statement, they have their values, they have what they believe in, and to the extent that that an institution's character and the student's character can coagulate to some degree, that's helpful. In sustaining an environment that's committed to a certain thing. So if it's, to bring your example in mind, if it's community service, if our institution was founded on the principles of giving back to the community that we're in, and defined either narrowly as that community or broadly as the state and the nation, then we're going to be looking for that evidence in our admission evaluation. Now, if you show evidence of giving back to the community and yet your test scores are low and your grades are low, you're not going to get in probably. But because of the competitive nature of at least the top 10 or 15% or so on the selectivity scale, the demonstrating that character can tip the scale. And there are really at least 5 types of character that colleges are looking at. One is performance character, kind of grit and perseverance, resilience, taking initiative, things like that, self-discipline. There's moral or ethical character, doing the right thing even when no one's looking, integrity, honesty, empathy, things like that we would look for. Civic character, contributing to the community, as the example that we just cited, was about. Intellectual character, being curious, being open-minded, being intellectually humble, as opposed to the smartest person in the room. And then, of course, social emotional character, managing emotions and relationships and being, self-aware. So, if I were to be totally honest on this, I think what's happened since COVID, and certainly now, character is, if it's used at all, and colleges aren't paying lip service to this. I mean, they really do believe in it. But if it's used, it's going to be used mostly at the highly selective areas, because otherwise, many colleges have to, in order to get their enrollments, they have to accept students who are qualified, right, academically. Now, they'll look for negative character. I mean, if you robbed a bank, you're probably not going to get it, right? But in terms of positive character attributes, I think it's mostly used at the upper end of the selectivity. At least that's my, that's my experience at this point. I think, however you want to measure character, we have to remember that it needs to parallel the institution's values. And I will give a shout out here to Swarthmore. I know we've mentioned Swarthmore several times in this, but they've done, I think, one of the best jobs in the country of being really transparent about what they're looking for in their students, and character comes out there, and it's right. I haven't looked at their website recently, but 3 or 4 years ago, it was right on their website. the kind of student that they were looking for. And the way they discerned that was not, in some backroom marketing discussion, but a survey of faculty. And the survey said, to faculty, what do you admire most about your best students? And that's how Swarthmore came up with this paradigm of character attributes that it looks for.
Yeah, we had Jim on the podcast very recently, and it's still up there.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's still up there, and they do a great job.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I've heard you, Bob, say, I want to say, I think I've heard you say there are 42 or 43,000 high schools in the country. Is that correct? Because I hear all kinds of different numbers. Some
I
people
didn't
say
I didn't give you
25
a number on that. I gave you a number on the number of
colleges, the 2,200. Yeah.
four-year colleges and university. Yeah, the number gets thrown around because two-year colleges are included, and for-profit colleges are included. And when you do that, I mean, you'll hear anything from 4,500 to 7,000. But if you're looking at four-year colleges and universities that are either public or nonprofit private, it's around 2,200.
I think it
That's
was 2275. A few of them have closed. I heard
yeah.
you I heard you say that you think we may have too many for the demand. Do you anticipate that number like getting down under 2,000, or within the next 20
Yeah,
years?
in the next 20 years, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, my
Sure.
crystal ball is
Sure.
cloudy these days, but yeah, I mean, there's certainly going to be more colleges that close and that merge. There's no doubt about that.
Mhm.
In the next in the next few years. So it'll probably, I don't know that it'll get down below 2,000, but it's probably going to be close.
And do you know the number of high schools? Like, I've heard
I, I,
conflicting,
I don't. I think it's somewhere in the 70,000 range, but I don't know for sure.
because I'll hear 70, I'll hear 42, 43, and then Salingo was on and he thought there's 25. He used to say 42, but then his more recent research says 25,000. I was listening to someone else I hold in high regard, very reputable, last week, and he said there are 33,000 high schools out there in the United States.
I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
okay.
I know I've visited many thousands of them over the years. So,
Well, we can wind down now. We have a tradition. No first time guest gets away without going on the hot seat. It's a little more lighthearted round where we ask a few questions. One of them I'd love to ask you is, what do you wish your 18-year-old self knew?
hmm. I wish my 18-year-old self knew that there's value in slowing down and in appreciating the little things in life
Mm.
that are, in the aggregate, more important than the grade that you get on a test or the accolades that you get as a professional. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
That's a good one. Smell the roses.
Roses. Yep.
Any books that you feel, boy, if you're a parent out there,
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah. Thank you.
read this book. It's worth your 10 hours, let's say, to put in to read this book. Anything
So,
come to mind?
there are so many books that have come out
Mhm.
recently. You got Jeff's new book that's coming out, Dream College. You've got his Who Gets In and Why. You got Ron Lieber's book on what's it called?
The Price You Pay for College.
What You Pay for College.
Mhm.
But here's one that was published 10 years ago
Mhm.
that I think is really valuable. And it's called How College Works. And it's by a professor who's probably professor emeritus now at Hamilton College named Dan Chambliss. And the reason I think it's so important for parents to read this is that it really articulates what's the characteristics of colleges that best serve their students. And as a kind of spoiler alert, I'll tell you that one of his conclusions after following Hamilton graduates now over a 10-year period and asking them, surveying them multiple times about whether they believe themselves to have been successful in life and professionally, that two things emerged as being really influential beyond the major, beyond the grades, beyond the research that they did. One, which you can find probably at any school, is that those alumni who considered themselves to be highly selective had one or two really close friends. I mean, people who would call them on their crap,
Mm-hmm.
and who would help them navigate because they really cared about them. The other, which I don't think you could find at every school unless unless you're aggressive as a student or persistent, is that those alumni who consider themselves successful had a really deep mentoring relationship with a faculty member or a staff member on campus. And that above all of the other variables, those were the things that that really made the difference. And so, after reading that book, I would hope that parents would look at college selection in a slightly different way than perhaps they're looking at it now.
That's great. I haven't read that book. Have you read that, Susan?
No, I haven't. I wrote it down though. So.
Not only did I write it down, Mr. Dan Chambliss is going to get invited to come on here and talk about it. I wrote that. LinkedIn is a great way for me to do invitations.
Good.
Final question. It's a triple, though. It's a triple header. Your advice for parents, students, and college counselors.
Well, my advice for parents is let this be your child's process. Too often, as parents, and I'll put myself in this category, even though, my kids are in their early 40s now, but, too often I had such great advice that I knew they could not survive without my advice. They needed me in every little nook and cranny. Well, they didn't, and I think it's important for us to not bombard them every second with, did you do that? Or did you consider this college? So kind of chill out a little bit and let them take the lead. And, when they need a push and you see they need a push, then push, but, not all the time. So that's one piece of advice I give to parents. To students, I would say, be thorough. Don't care as much about what your friends are doing as what you're interested in. Look beyond the window sticker, get a sense of what it's like to live at the college or university that you select before you select it, take Frank Bruni's advice, which is, where you go is not who you'll be, or what is that? Was that
the name? What a great name for a book.
Yeah. And then for college counselors, God bless you. I have no advice. It's a tough job. It's a tough job managing student expectations and parent expectations, all the while trying to do what's in their best interest. And sometimes, they know better what their best interest is than the professionals who have done this for 30 plus years. So it's a tough job. I say, drink a lot of coffee and take some time for yourselves when you're not talking about all things college.
I'm only laughing because we had Heath Einstein from TCU on, and the way he answered the last question was have plenty of wine. It's a tough job. Counselors have some wine available. So, but you went for coffee.
Because I think wine might put you to sleep. So I would rather have you be awake when you're
agreed.
Some of these things.
Bob, thank you so much.
Know that our job, Bob, as counselors, is helping kids find colleges that are going to be a great fit for them and bring out their very best during their college years. We're not getting kids in anywhere,
right? Of course,
but we're helping them find schools that are simply going to be a great place to grow.
Yep. And that's the way it should be. So,
Bob, you've been most generous with your time. You've given us 100 minutes of your precious time, and we're most grateful, and I know our listeners will be as well. So thanks a bunch. Will we see you in Columbus at NACAC this year?
I am not going to be there
Oh,
this year. This is probably the first NACAC I've missed in a long time. But
Yeah.
I am instead going to. I know this is slumming it, folks, but somebody has to do it. I'm going to be in Italy.
tough life.
In Milan. The daughter of my favorite cousin is getting married there.
There you go.
Oh,
That's where I'm going to be. So
There you go. Awesome.
sounds
Well,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you next year or somewhere on the road, and keep up the good work.
Where is the following year conference?
I don't even know that. Do you know, Susan?
No, I don't.
Well, it's on the East Coast, so
Yeah.
maybe we'll get here. So
There you go. Yeah.
thanks. Great to see you both, Mark. Great to finally meet you and in person. And Susan, it's always a pleasure.
Oh, I loved spending time with you, Bob.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
all take care. Okay.
Friends, this concludes this segment with Bob Massa. We'll now finish up with our lawyer. It's not really a lawyer panel this time. It's just Jeff and Jon and me this time. I had some follow-up questions that I had to ask. And of course, we had to put them on the hot seat. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's the final segment. Listen and enjoy.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, Jon and Jeff are back, and this time without the students. I had a few questions for Jeff and Jon that I really thought you would be interested in their answers. And then we had a partner from a West Coast law firm who's a regular podcast listener, heard the first segment, and she sent in her thoughts, and I turned her thoughts into another question. So in this segment, you will hear Jeff and Jon's answers to a few of my questions and the attorney's question. And then, of course, we have to put them on the hot seat in our lightning round. I just can't thank the students enough for participating in our panel discussion. I also can't thank Jeff and Jon enough for giving up 2 of their evenings, over 2 hours of their precious time, so that our listeners could benefit. So without any further ado, let's listen to some sage wisdom from Jeff and Jon. Friends, Jeff and Jon are back. We don't have our students with us, but I have a couple questions that I wanted to ask them about law. You guys ready?
Sure. Go for it.
Awesome. So one question I have, a little bit of background. So I worked with this student, very awesome person, character, drive, all that stuff, back in like 2004. I was at Westtown at the time. Wanted to be a lawyer, wanted to go to Columbia. Like at age 15, 16, I want to go to Columbia. I want to be a lawyer. And I went to her graduation. She went to Swarthmore College just outside of Philly, and she got the top student award at all of Swarthmore. So pretty highly accomplished, right? But Columbia said to her, if you want to come here, go get some experience, like at least a year. So she went and worked in a West Philly empowerment zone and went to Columbia. And it's a pretty cool story. Last I knew, she was the patent attorney for Facebook. So, so things worked out for her. But my question is, how common is it for a school to really want students to get experience and not just go from undergrad right to law school? Is it advisable? I know it can vary school by school. We know that. It depends, right? It can answer for everything in college admissions. It depends. But I guess I should reframe it. Like, is that something that you would advise? Like Jeff had his 5-year gig, doing taxis and a lot of stuff. So that was your path, right? Where Jon, you were like straight from Wisconsin, NYU, right?
I can speak to my experience at my law school, and I you might want to have a law school admissions person on to speak to the other part of it. That would actually be interesting to hear. But anecdotally, my sense is that the law students that were in my class, the ones that were older and more seasoned, did better in law school. Just my experience. Don't have a big data set to back that up, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, you've got more life experience. You maybe have a better sense for why you're there. You've maybe ruled out some other career paths, so this is really the one. And so that doesn't mean that there weren't very successful people like Jon who went straight through, So, but, at my law school, which was not, a top 14 law school, I think the students that did not go straight through ended up having a lot of success.
And I'll answer that, Mark, with, I guess it's still anecdotal evidence, but maybe verging on empirical. As the hiring partner of the firm and the former hiring partner specifically for entry-level recruiting, we've spent a lot of time both interviewing students and thinking about students that we're interviewing. And we come, generally speaking, from an entry-level recruiting perspective to the same conclusion, which is you tend to find more mature, more intentional students when they've spent time in the workforce. There are some portion of students that go straight through from college to law school that probably do it because, hey, I don't know what else to do, and lawyers can make money, so I'll go do this thing. And maybe that's thoughtful, maybe that isn't. The folks that have spent time in the workforce and come back are doing so with far more intentionality. Now, to Jeff's point, plenty of successful folks go straight through. I'm a little surprised to hear that a law school would say something to a student. I remember when I went to NYU, now this is a number of years ago, however many doesn't matter. But when I went, they begged some of us to defer, not because we would be better students, but because they thought they were going to be oversubscribed. So who knows if something like that was happening at the time as well. But it does seem like it's probably pretty good advice across the board.
And I had Lydia Dagenet on, who had done law school admissions maybe a year or so ago, and she did say that that's a big advantage, but I just wanted to kind of get the perspective from people who are on the hiring side, because it's kind of two different angles, right? There's the law school perspective, and then you're seeing somebody a little further down the path. So that's great. All right. My other question is, and you teed it up nicely, Jeff, when you said, you didn't go to a T14. That's a term you throw around, T14. Jon, it came up a couple times in the conversation. Jon was like, NYU went from 4th to 8th. And then,
because of me, to be clear, nobody else. My fault.
Your fault. And then, Jeff, you kind of said it another time. You're like, BU is a good school, but it's not like top tier. And so, this is my question on that. So I know that this is so nuanced, so I hope I can ask it the right way. I've always known law, especially corporate law, certain firms, to be more hierarchical than maybe some places, because I'll talk to a lot of doctors and they'll be like, for example, I worked with a doctor year before last. He said, I went to MIT and I'm in my 50s and I've been asked 3 times my whole life where I went to school. And that includes my residency, everything. It's just, I share an office with someone who went to a school that admitted 90% of undergrads. It just doesn't matter. And that's Dave's perspective, right? So I kind of reflexively react when I hear this is 4th, this is 8th. You guys know how I think, right? Like my thing is, for example, if somebody wants to do agricultural law, University of Arkansas and Drake are about as good as it gets. If someone doesn't like New York City, they're probably not going to like their time at NYU, and then they're not going to do as well. If someone knows they want to live in Boston, BU is probably a top tier option for them because they can start building their Boston network while they're in college. So am I just being naive? Like, it is what it is. This is the way it is. There's a T14, and if you go there, good things happen to you because, I'm all about you create your own rankings and you don't let somebody else tell you what is it, what is 4th and what is 8th. Like 4th and 8th, according to who? According to my set of values or according to, some editor of a magazine? So I just kind of want your thoughts on sort of, yeah, that's true, or that's a bunch of malarkey. This is the way it actually works in the real world.
I think it depends so much on what you want out of your law career. And what I mean, if you want to be a federal judge, you better go to a T14 law school. So that it depends a lot on your ultimate goals. If you aren't really sure and you just want to You want to be a lawyer, but you're not exactly sure what kind, or, I think I've seen so many people have success from my school, which is in the 3-digit range. I think Seattle U's in the low 100s somewhere. And candidly, there was I think what you see is at the top end of those schools, you find some very good students that would be just as competitive as at the top 25 schools. Where the difference is the floor is lower. There were probably some students in my law school that should not have been there, and that were probably wasting their money by, I hope they weren't borrowing, but some of them probably were. Most of them probably were. And so I do worry about that. But if you are gonna if you're gonna succeed, it doesn't really matter that much, I don't think, where your school is ranked. And I think there's so many other things in law that have nothing to do with grades or rankings. I mean, they don't teach you in undergrad or law school how to get clients. That's not a course you take. But you can come out of law school with a 4.0, get an awesome job at John's New York law firm. But if you can't generate business, your career path there is probably not going to last a long time, I'm guessing. I mean, maybe John will disagree with that. But at the end of the day, you need to know how to relate to people, and you need to generate a book of business. And if you can't do that, your grades ultimately become irrelevant.
Jeff, irrespective of my firm in particular, I tend to agree with that, although to the extent that any associates at our firm are listening, please focus on becoming an excellent lawyer first and worry about client development second. Because unless you're an excellent lawyer, it doesn't matter from our perspective whether you think you can get clients or not. So putting that aside, it's a little bit of humor, but also there's some truth there too. We do have those conversations with some folks. Putting that aside, I wholeheartedly agree that where you want to start your career and sometimes where you want to end up, Jeff, as you noted, can dictate or may dictate where you start in terms of the flexibility you have for pursuing schools. Yes, if you want to be a federal judge, I agree. You should be aiming for a top school. Someone who did not aspire to be a federal judge, I would argue T14 is not even enough. You need to be in an even smaller subset of the T14, and then you need to get an amazing clerkship with a wonderful district or hopefully circuit court judge, depending on where you are. And those are really, really hard to get, and they really limit your options, frankly, if you don't. In terms of the ability to enter big law, which is not something all should aspire to do by any stretch of the imagination, but if you are, there is no question that your opportunities are greater if you're starting at a T14 school. And frankly, again, the higher end of the T14, or maybe the location of the T14, depending on where you want to be, may dictate that as well. Beyond that, if your goal is to be a lawyer hanging up a shingle, it's a very, very, very different conversation. That is the ranking or the rating of the school or whatever that might be is far less important. Now, that all said, Mark, what I will say is if you're not aspiring to be a federal judge, for example, later on in your career, where you went to law school matters a lot less than the things Jeff's talking about. On the hiring level, when we're looking at lateral partners or partner recruits seeking to lateral over to us potentially, we are going to be looking very heavily at what is the book of business that might be portable? How have you built and maintained client relationships, in addition to all the other things that matter? Culture, which is very, very important to us. The type of practice that you have and does it fit with us? But nobody's going to go, I'll use New York City. You went to New York law versus NYU, therefore it matters. No, we're going to look at how you've developed your practice, what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and what do we think you would bring to us, and how could you help us and us help you, and we all help our clients together.
Thank you. This is such a basic question, but we never answered it. I can imagine there's a listener out there that said, I've heard the term big law used a lot. What is big law? I don't think we should assume everybody knows what that is. John, I'm going to throw that one at you.
Yeah, we probably should have defined that to begin with. And so we as the lawyers here have failed you all miserably. Viewers and listeners, we apologize. Big law is generally used as a term to refer to the largest corporate law firms in America and to a lesser extent, the UK and some other places in the world. Those tend to be the law firms that if you open up the Wall Street Journal, you're probably going to read about. Those tend to be the law firms that have the highest requirements in terms of hours they expect you to bill and effort they expect you to put into the job and availability, irrespective of whether you are working or not. And in addition, they also tend to be the firms that, starting your career, pay the highest salaries. And so therefore, there is an attraction without a doubt that many law students have that, hey, I want to be at a law firm that pays, in quotes, market salary, which will be X, Y, or Z in any given year. And there are only so many firms that do that. And it is, at the end of the day, an incredibly small portion of practicing lawyers overall. And it gets a far, 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 far disproportionate focus from, the Reddit community and other places in the world.
Thank you. This is kind of another follow-up for you, John. So your company has offices on the East Coast and the West Coast, multiple locations. And, and Jeff, you could speak to this probably as well. Do you find there's a real big cultural difference for lawyers in terms of anything, job demands, client demands, expectations, if you're in Palo Alto versus, New York, or not really, because you've got national clients and they're all over, and I know it's really not really a difference. It's just an office and a location.
Here's what I'll say to that, Mark. If you look at the U.S. legal market, the three largest areas for the provision of sophisticated financial, in particular, legal services is New York City, Washington, D.C., and Northern California. We have 4 offices in those 3 locations for a reason. It's not a coincidence. It isn't necessarily that our clients are there, though if you look at the practices we have, for example, we do lots of work in the investment management world, and a lot of hedge funds are in New York City or in Connecticut, so they're very close by. If you look in Palo Alto, Northern California, the Silicon Valley area, we have a very vibrant bi-coastal ECVC, emerging company venture capital practice. There's a reason we are in Palo Alto. Go to San Francisco and Palo Alto, you're going to find most startups, most really, really, really sophisticated law firms that cater to ECVC clients are going to have a location in Palo Alto. So some of it is a function of the work that you're driving. Now, on the flip side, we also have an office in Salt Lake City, or just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. That office tends to do a very specific kind of practice of law that works well with our client base. But given the lawyers that are there, offers them an opportunity to do things that don't require them to be billing 2,500 hours a year. And I'm not saying that we expect our folks to bill 2,500 hours a year, but the folks that go in there go in with the mentality that family and church matter a lot, and that's important to us as well. And so when you're in a place like Salt Lake City, you are seeing a difference in culture. So I do think you will see, even at large firms when they have offices in various places, that there's a difference from office to office.
I want to come back to sort of the whole talk about ranking and all this. And this is something I'm going to say that relates to law school, that also relates to just Ivy League grads as well for undergrad. But something I'm hearing a lot of, I'm hearing it actually in the Bay Area, I'm hearing it in DC, I'm hearing it in other places, is that where you went to school doesn't matter as much as it used to. And in some cases, there can be almost a bias against you, like you're not scrappy, you're maybe a know-it-all. And there's even an attorney who is a partner who listens to every episode, and he reached out to me and talked to me about this. And at one time, At one time, I was even said to him, look, you that might be something that might be interesting to our listeners, and he kind of thought, well, I'm not sure how well that would land for me to talk about that, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing out here. I don't know, there might be some other people that may not want me to go public with that, but it was kind of his perspective. But so I'm kind of hearing that. Like, do you see anything to that? Have you seen any trend where name is not counting as much as it did 20 years ago or not?
I don't know,
Jeff, I'll let you start with this one. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Look, I have a ton of opinions on this subject, but they're just my opinions. I mean, I will just say I'm not super impressed with the critical thinking that's coming out of Columbia University right now, and I'll leave it at that. But as far as the whether other people are having that thought in the hiring of graduates, I unfortunately I really can't speak to that, Mark.
Yeah, I would say, Mark, I wouldn't say we've seen that in the market, either ourselves or similarly situated firms, peer firms, or the few firms to which we aspire to be. I think what's more important from our perspective is how we think you will perform and your likelihood of success when you come to us at a firm. And that does mean that if you've shown the intellectual ability to end up at certain schools, there might be a little more leeway in terms of where you are, let's say, in terms of class rank. I will also say law schools are completely and totally hiding that now, which actually makes it harder to judge students. But I can't recall a single conversation where we went, that's a really smart student at a really good school. We can't have them. That would not work out for us. We are not, however, only testing on grades and school you're at. We are looking holistically, not quite the way, say, law schools or undergrads do, but we want to see the person and see how they'll fit within our community.
So a listener wrote in, an attorney, and said it's not all glamour, and there's some difficult parts out here in this profession. I think some of them came out in the conversation. I thought it was a very real conversation. But is there anything that you think, a lot of people are disillusioned about XYZ, about law, and you need to be ready to deal with it if this is something that you want to do, that maybe there's a disconnect between the perception of it and the reality when people are in the profession. And I know that's a pretty wide open, it depends on, do you have the right match with the right firm? And are you doing the kind of law you want to do, right? But if to the extent to which there's disillusionment between the perception and the reality, what are some of the areas where you see disillusionment with younger attorneys?
Want me to go first, or you want to go, Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that I would call it disillusionment, but I will say the following. So we're recording this slightly after 9 p.m. East Coast time. Since we've started recording 20 or so minutes ago, I've gotten 32 work emails. Just to give some context for our listening audience out there.
Well, something, I'm impressed with you because when I send you an email, you respond fast.
There's something to that. I'll put it that way. If you're not responding fast, there may be something to that as well. Now, that doesn't mean I always see them, but that's a different story. And so I apologize when I don't. But, there is, depending on the kind of practice you're in, if you look in the big law world, you are trading your time for compensation and experience. And there's no question that happens. Now, that happens very differently at different firms. And even within a given firm, it can happen incredibly differently depending on the practice and depending on the lawyers with whom you work, as well as the clients and the kind of work you're doing. It just so happens we've got a lot going on in my group right now, and we're keeping busy, and that means people are pushing hard. There are some firms that will expect you to truly be on call 24/7. We're not one of those firms. But they will expect you, if you get an email from a partner Saturday night at 9 p.m. saying, I need you in tomorrow morning, that you're in tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Sunday morning. Again, we're not that kind of place. If stuff's busy and stuff's going on and you got to get your work done, you got to get your work done. But this is not a 9 to 5 job that we have. And maybe there's some, to your point, disillusionment around that. There is an expectation you're going to work long hours. I don't like to call it working hard. Mark, I think you know my youngest brother is a retired disabled Marine. I understand what working hard is from him and his brethren. This isn't working hard. This may be stressful, maybe a lot of hours. But you have to understand there are trade-offs there. If you want a 9 to 5 job or a 9 to 6 job or an 8 to 6 job, this isn't that job, and we shouldn't pretend that it is. But for the folks that like the excitement and the enjoyment and the opportunity, it can be a lot of fun. It's the reality of the world.
Jeff, what do you want to add to that?
I think where a lot of the disillusionment might arise is on the subject of compensation, because there are so few of those big law jobs out there, and I think I'm guessing there's a pretty big group of students who go into law school with dollar signs in their eyes, and they just think they're gonna 3 more years and then they're going to be making the big bucks, and that there are some jobs out there that certainly get you there, but it's the minority. It's the minority of jobs that do that. I really worry that too many people are going to law school for the wrong reasons, chasing that big law job. I mean, it's great to have a goal, but I'm not sure that's a realistic goal for everyone. And I wish there was a way to vet people's, vet people's expectations before they spend all that money on law school. The truth of the matter is, where there is tons of demand, and probably will be for a long time, is in prosecution and public defense. But there's a whole bunch of people that don't want to do those jobs because they don't pay very well. But if you want to be a public defender and you know what the money, what the salary is before you go to law school, and you want to sign up for that, please go to law school. We need you. So anyway, it's mostly, I think, on the compensation side.
Then I'll add on that point. I've managed to end up on TikTok law, or big law TikTok, I guess, or big law talk, or whatever the Gen Zers would call it. I don't know how that's happened.
You'd be good there, by the way. You're witty and cool. You'd be good there.
I appreciate it, but I'm happy to not be a public face there at all. Nobody needs to see my public face. How about that? But what I will say is, I saw there was a really interesting post somebody had recently, to Jeff's point about compensation, about how lawyer compensation has 2 curves to it, 2 bell curves. And the median on the left is, if you sort of picture it in your head, is a much, 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 much lower than the median on the right, because the median on the left is where most lawyers actually are. And then you sort of have the big law and some other kinds of law to the right. And so, yes, you'll have 2 curves, but most people are going to start to the left, not to the right. So if you're going in expecting you're getting to the right, to the big starting salary and whatever that leads to, you're probably going in and will end up being disillusioned in a number of cases.
Love those answers. I think that's really helpful, the texture you provided, both compensation and hours and demands of the job. All right, time for full transparency with our listeners. So I had to end the session with the students because I had to meet a client, and then John is like, no hot seat. And I'm like, we got to have a hot seat. So we're recording this post. This is second recording. That's why the students aren't there. So it's hot seat time. First question is, I don't know if I want to say the biggest mistake you made in college, or something that you would do different if you were in college and going to college all over again. Let you take it where you want to go with that.
I actually have an answer to that. And I will preface this answer by saying, while I said to Mark there was no hot seat, I said that in not a disappointed way, but a happy way, for fear that I wouldn't be able to answer the questions he was asking. And I actually have an answer to this one, so I'm shocked.
You're the lawyer. I can give you some grilling. We can flip sweets.
Exactly. Although lawyers can be terrible witnesses. That's okay. That's it. Here's my serious answer to that, which is, I wish I had gotten more involved in more clubs earlier on and met more people earlier on. I didn't do that. And I do regret, to the extent I have a regret in college, that's probably it, is that I wasn't more out there meeting more people, getting out of my comfort zone. I was a lot shyer when I was younger, and I think I missed out on opportunities because of that.
Few regrets, but I guess if I had to pick one, I would say I regret not understanding that I could have dropped calculus at a particular point in time, instead of actually finishing the course and having it mess up my grades. Yeah, that's my regret.
Okay, hold on, Mark. Before we go on, if Maya is listening to this, Maya, do not listen to what Jeff just said. For those, Maya's got to start college. I don't want her to hear what Jeff just said. Maya's my daughter.
Maya's John's oldest daughter. I was thinking when I asked the question, how would I answer that? I would have either said, I wish I would have studied abroad. It just wasn't the big deal that it is now. And then it's hard to do that. Married kids home, just go to 6 months to Chile, Bolivia and all that, like my oldest daughter did. Or the other thing is I could have gone into the honors college, or Michigan State has a really good school called the James Madison School, and it's just more focused, higher achievers. And I wish I would have done that. So just for what it's worth, I'll throw that in there. All right. Best decision you made in college. I stumped them. You should see the looks on their faces like I didn't make any good decisions.
No. I would say deciding to continue swimming on the varsity team. That would be it. Yeah.
This is going to be a pretty questionable answer, but I'll give it anyway. I decided to be a resident assistant my senior year. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the first time as a 20-ish-year-old student. I was at the end of the class. I probably wasn't even 21 then. When I was in charge of something, and actually something substantial, in that there were hundreds and hundreds of kids, and we had, as RAs, you didn't just have a floor, but you worked the front desk, and you had to patrol the halls and check in and do all those kinds of things that up until that point in time in college, I did not have a job. And so I actually think doing that and taking on that responsibility and paying for my own housing and being responsible for others was very transformative.
Anything for you, Jeff?
Swim team.
Yeah, that's right.
Just swim team.
Yeah.
That's actually a great one.
Yeah, awesome. And Jeff has a daughter that swims in college, so she caught the vision. It's just stayed in the family, passed that torch on, which is pretty cool. You've heard me answer this one before. What do you wish your 18-year-old self knew?
That Microsoft was going to be a big deal.
I wish my 46-year-old self knew that NVIDIA was going to be a big deal. I don't need to go back to Microsoft.
And that's spoken like somebody in Seattle over there with Microsoft there, right? So
that's
all good.
Let's see. What your 18-year-old self knew.
It's not the easiest question.
Here's what I would say. I would say that as a human being, you are constantly evolving and changing, and so are all of the people around you. And that who you are at a given moment in time is not who you are. It is who you are at a given moment in time. And that means a few things. First, there is always an opportunity to learn and grow. Second, there is always an opportunity to give grace to others if they don't do the things you wish they did, or if they've harmed you in some way, because you will want that grace yourself at some point in time, or many, many, many points in time in the future. And that who you are at 18 does not and will not and cannot and should not dictate who you are later in life. Similarly, the decisions you are making at 18 do not determine the course of your life. I've heard a very wise podcaster repeatedly say, your attitude, Mark, what's the quote? Say it.
Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude.
Exactly, right? So remember that as you're going forward. And then one last thing I'll say, because this generation of 18-year-olds is very, very different than my generation of 18-year-olds. It isn't that big a deal. Whatever the it is, it isn't that big a deal. It just isn't. Things will generally work out. You're allowed to make mistakes. The best things you can do in life sometimes are fail, because you will learn from those failures and become a better person, a better partner, a better whatever in life because of those things. And it just isn't that big a deal. nor do you have to know what your future is, because none of us did at 18. None of us did at 20. None of us did at 30. None of us do at 50 or maybe 70. And that's okay.
Anything you want to add to that one, Jeff?
No, I really don't. Yeah. Good answer.
That was
John.
good. That was good. All right. Last question. What would you do if you weren't in the field of law? You have to earn your living doing something else.
I'll tell you what I almost did do. I applied to urban planning school at the same time I applied to law school.
Wow.
And I was torn between those two, and somebody told me some pretty wise words, which were, you can be a planner with a law degree, but you can't be a lawyer with a planning degree. So that sealed the deal for me.
There you go.
I still have a fondness for urban planning.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
I'll give two answers. I'll give the 18-year-old self or 20-year-old self answer, and then I'll give the now answer. The 18, 20-year-old self is be a football coach. I grew up playing and loving football to the point where when I was a little kid, I would literally diagram plays with coins on my floor. Like, that's how obsessed I was with the game as like a 7, 8-year-old. And so I think if you ask the folks who work with me, they would not be surprised if they heard me say something like that. How about that? My current self, and you're welcome to have your sound engineer cut this out completely, because this is purely a shameless plug right now that has nothing to do with me whatsoever, which is my wife is a recording artist. She has started and released her first single, and it would be really, really amazing to be in a creative field like that, where you're getting to do something that is so incredibly different from what I do now. I think what we do oftentimes in the legal field actually can be very creative, but it's creative in a very business-oriented way, at least in terms of the work that we do. Whereas artists that are musicians or painters oftentimes are truly just doing it because they are inspired to do it. And there's something incredibly beautiful and wonderful about that.
So I was going to ask you this, Jon, anyway, so this is a perfect segue. I was going to ask if we could end this podcast with her song. I know it's up on
Spotify.
Yeah, it's up on Spotify. I don't know if there's any little, permissions or anything like that, or she can call the shots on that, but I thought we'd be creative and end the podcast with Sophie's song.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. That would be wonderful. I don't know that how she would feel about it, but that's good. I like that. That's exciting. She'd be like, "Oh, why is my song on a college admissions podcast?"
Just right? Make sure that she's not driving the car when you play the episode.
Oh my! Well, yeah. Now depends on whether this portion is played or not, right?
Oh, it's gonna be played.
There we go.
I already plan on asking you that. And then
that would be wonderful. Yeah, for those at home who are wondering, my wife's name is Sophie Wests. The song is "Note to Self." It is her solo debut single. It was picked up by Spotify's Release Radar and has been played in 63 countries already, which is pretty amazing.
Awesome. That is awesome.
So I love that, Mark, and very, very much appreciate it. And Jeff will now be streaming it as well, as he's currently adding it, I think, to his Spotify list.
Adding it to my playlist, yeah.
Hey, so it's the least I can do to say thank you and be creative. Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you and coming back a second time. And thanks for all your wisdom.
Absolutely. Happy
pleasure.
to help.
Our pleasure.
I walk alone with headphones in, 'cause sometimes I can't bear the sound of the mountains. But I don't find peace in the heart of the city, with the wounds of generations bleeding all around me. And maybe it's time I realize that I created takes time, but it works if you work at it. That's what everybody says, and I have no reason not to believe it. But I've been digging the same hole for years and years, and the dim light at the surface feels 1,000 miles away. Sometimes it's just so hard to care. And maybe it's time I realize that I create my own demise. And every time I've burned things down, it's only luck that's found me in a better place. Can't take that chance again. I always wanted things to work out. I never meant to cause a scene. I always hit the brakes when I see trouble up ahead. Then I just run. Taking my time and I hope that it's worth it. 'Cause admitting when I'm wrong is just a bitter pill to swallow, even though I know that it's good for me. Sometimes a song is the best I got. Sometimes I don't even have a song, and maybe that's enough. And maybe it's time I realize that I create my own demise. And every time I've burned things down, it's only luck that's found me in a better place. Yeah, maybe it's time I realize that I create my own demise. And every time I've burned things down, it's only luck that's found me in a better place. Can't take that chance again. Can't take that chance again.
On Monday's episode, Hillary will take a question from a listener. And then you spoke up and we heard you. We are having up one of our roundtable discussions. And it is with Julia, Susan, and me. And we're talking about something that's not known very well. It's the secondary school report, also known as the school report. It's what your school counselor sends to colleges that they incorporate in their evaluation of the file. Not very much is known about it. And so over the next 3 weeks, Julia, Susan, and I are going to break it down. And then we'll have the final segment of my interview with Dr. Raymond Blakely. And we're talking about University of Texas at Austin. I have to give Raymond a lot of credit because I asked him some really tough questions in this segment. And most people wouldn't have actually answered those questions, to be really honest with you. So you got to give them a lot of credit for doing that. I don't want to just give you guys softball interviews. I don't think that's very helpful. I don't think you want to come on and just feel like it's a puff piece or like, it's an infomercial for a college to just get up and spin you. And so that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide information, but also trying to ask the tough questions. And I feel like I do that in this interview. And I give them a lot of credit for answering questions that, I was talking with Julia. She was like, 99% of admission officers would not answer those questions. So I give Raymond all the credit in the world. So hopefully you'll join us on Thursday for that. And friends, remember, college is not a prize to be won. College is a match to be made. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid.website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalianos Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.